Hello there everyone and welcome to Behind the Song. So this is a new series for me, which might be a series or might not, may only be this one video. Maybe this video won't even get uploaded, who knows. This is a bit of an experiment for me. So I've had this idea for a while now where I wanted to make a video or a series of videos sort of breaking down some of my songs that I've released and sort of going into the production of them and some of the stories behind them, that sort of thing. And I was particularly inspired recently by Dayglow, who is a favourite artist of mine, who started releasing a similar thing to something that I had already, I was already planning on doing at some point. So I was like, hey, we're stuck in lockdown, people might be bored, I'm bored, so let's just do a video explaining and sort of going into my songs. Now, if you're not familiar with any of my music or if you're new to my channel, I will make this really, really clear. I am a complete amateur. I do everything on my own in my bedroom. I'm not a professional producer or anything like that. But this is just, my music is just something that I do for fun because I really enjoy it. And this video is just, a bit of an experiment explaining that. So I thought today, for the first and possibly only episode, but I thought a good place to start would be with Afterthought from my second EP, I'll Be a Tragedy. I thought this would probably be an interesting one to start with because it's quite simple, but there's also, a bunch of different elements to it. So let's get into that. So the reason I say Afterthought is quite an interesting one is because it actually sort of stemmed from several different ideas that I ended up kind of blending together. So originally when I was first playing around with the idea, I had this sort of indie rock anthemic sort of idea for a track, and this was just the very rough idea that I started with. It sounded like this. So you've got the basic sort of piano rhythm and the chords, and there's a bass synth in there, which is obviously a very different bass synth to what I ended up with. But this version, this original idea, has this little guitar line that didn't end up being in the track, and it's also got some strings or something. What was that back there? Yeah, that little melody there didn't end up being in the final track, and obviously the beat is the beat's different here. It's it's still quite a basic beat, but this is more of a dum 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 dum, which is something more like I ended up using in the song Can't Night with Elsie. Whereas in Afterthought, obviously you've got the rapid hi-hat beat, which I ended up going with instead. So that was one of the original ideas that this stemmed from, and when I sort of went to sort of develop that, I ended up with this version, which is different. This has the beat, the hi-hat beat, which ended up in the final track. So we've got the bass. This is just me laying down the very basic structure at this point, so nothing layered. I always wanted this sort of steady, repetitive piano. You got the basic strings coming in there. But the main thing that I really liked about this one, and the reason this one stuck with me, was because of this. These chords. That chord progression, okay, I didn't have the snare thing there. Okay, so that chord progression where it switches to the minor, I absolutely adored that and still do. That's like my favourite thing about the track. Those chords just sound gorgeous in my opinion. So here I'm laying down the basic melody for the chorus, that sort of rhythm. But I've got these sort of swooping reverb-filled strings which sound very reminiscent of the first EP. So that was a sound I was using a lot on the first EP. That didn't end up on the final track. Like I said, this is a very basic stripped-back version. I don't think there's much else interesting about this one. Oh, hello. So this is completely different to what we ended up with. Got this verse. whatever this is here. This sort of building with cymbals. None of this was in it. And those strings again. So that's when you first hear another one of my absolute favourite things about the track, when you got the build and then the snares. So we'll get to that in a second on the final track. I think that's pretty much it for this version. Yeah, so that one stuck with me because of the drum beat with the hi-hats. Really loved that. And then the chord progression. However, various other sections of the final track came from this one here. Now this is really interesting because this was an idea I was messing around with, which was a more electronic, slightly hip-hop based track, which I think, as you'll probably be able to hear, was heavily inspired by Love by Kendrick Lamar. Is that the name of the track? That sort of thing. The beat on this is basically ripped straight from that. So I'm glad I didn't end up using it because it would have been a total rip-off. But I had this, which sounds like this. So here you've got this glitchy piano sound, which ended up on the final version. But the beat's very different here, you'll see in a sec. Here's the bass synth that I ended up using. But then when you get to the beat here, yeah, so that's that version, which I really liked at the time, and I still think it's kind of cool. But what I ended up realizing, I didn't make it, with the intention of this happening, but what I ended up realizing was that this sort of electronic hip-hop track I was working on actually had the exact same chords as the second version with the rhythmic piano that I just played a second ago. So I was like, okay, hold on, well, why don't I try and combine those? So I ended up with this, which is me trying to combine these. Which obviously sounds a lot more like this here, which is the final version of the track. So yeah, I really did like that sort of hip-hop version. I wanted to include some elements of that, but at the time I knew that after making the first EP, Spoiled by Earthrun, I knew that I wanted to go in a slightly more indie rock direction, still keeping the poppy elements and the electronic elements, but including some more like indie rock stuff. I really wanted to create a sort of fusion of like a orchestral indie rock sound with a poppy electronic sound, and I think I succeeded. I really do love the second EP. It really holds a special place in my heart. So this is the final track. Now the only thing I'm going to say is that since creating this EP, I have moved to a different computer, which is a much better one. So unfortunately, in transferring everything over, I've lost the recorded audio file. So that means I don't have the vocals and the guitar for anything from this EP, unfortunately. So I can't really talk too much about the vocals and the guitar because, as you can see, unfortunately, they're missing. Which is a shame, but everything else remains intact pretty much. So I can talk through this sort of thing. So I chose to start off the track with the glitchy piano, which I think is maybe in a different key to the hip-hop version. I'm not sure. So this one, this is a really interesting sound. So it's a combination of two different MIDI piano synths. They're really, really basic MIDI piano. So there's this basic piano, and then there's this slightly detuned one. And then just put them together, some of this really, really basic stuff. And then basically it's just loads and loads of layered plugins. So if I just get rid of all of these so you can hear what the raw sound is like, it just sounds like this. Yeah. And that's it. That's all the raw sound is. But then, so I've got the basic sort of reverb and delay and EQ and stuff. And then when you add the distortion, it starts sounding a bit more fun. Yeah, but then the main thing, FL Studio has this plugin called Gross Beat, which is just the most beautiful thing on this earth. So when I add that, it then sounds like this. So it's basically, I don't think these guys really do anything. I think they come later. It's basically a combination of that sort of stutter, that and this. No. This, because it starts off with this one, that fades out as this fades in. So it's sort of transitioning between the two effects. It's been a long time since I've looked at this project. Yeah. So that is the glitchy piano intro, which I really love, and that runs pretty much through the whole song, I believe. The only difference is when it gets to the chord change, which I was talking about earlier, and then it just sounds like this. I love distortion. I just love taking pretty much any instrument and just throwing distortion on it. You might be able to tell. I just think it makes things sound so nice. But yeah, so that really just changes when the chords change. So let's talk about the bass for a second. The bass is a combination of two things. It's a combination of the bass synth and a MIDI bass guitar, which is a terrible bass guitar, but it doesn't matter because it's hidden by this bass synth, more or less. So you start off with this synth, which is sort of at the beginning of the track. Yeah, nice sort of wobby synth. Then the bass guitar comes in. And the way it's mixed, you can barely hear it under the bass synth, but it's here. It sounds like this if I turn it up. Yeah, that's our terrible MIDI bass guitar. But it's fine, because it's mixed quite quietly. I guess I just combine those to give it more of a sense of rhythm. Not that you need a sense of rhythm because of these things. So these are the drums. They just kind of fade in at the start. Just a simple volume fade in. Yeah, and they just run with this beat. For pretty much the whole song, actually. There's not too much variation in the drum beat, except there's a little hi-hat pattern there, but the main one is my favourite bit. Where is it? Here it is. It's the build-up before the big chorus, second verse, whatever you want to call it, which just sounds like this. Yeah, I love that. Cool, so we've got some other synths going on in here. We've got this little arpeggio, which is quite quiet. And to be honest, until I opened this project, I forgot it was here. So that is... what is that? So without any of the effects, that sounds like this. Then there's just some EQ. There's some reverb. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Nice little synth. What else have we got? We got this, which is really quiet. This was from the original hip-hop version. Which on its own doesn't sound very good, but it really works within the context of the mix. So yeah, that's all good. We've got a pad going on. I'm not quite sure what this one is. Oh yeah, okay. Again, all these things are quite low in the mix. I think it's because the drums are quite aggressive. The piano, when we get to that in a second, that's quite aggressive. The bass is quite big and all-encompassing. And the strings are quite sharp as well. So a lot of this is sort of quite subtle stuff. We got the strings. That's literally all they do throughout the entire song. And then it's the piano, which is sort of my favourite thing about the track, really. It just starts off with this really sort of basic because I really wanted the piano in this track to be really sort of simple and rhythmic. I think the main thing about this song is rhythm. It's all about maintaining that steady rhythm throughout, and then the vocals do all the weird, not weird stuff, but they do all the interesting stuff because the vocals are sort of the main focus. These chords again, I love, but then my favourite thing here, it adds another layer of piano. And that, for me, is possibly the most effective thing about the whole track. So you start off with just this, and then it adds this, which creates this. But just that combined with the build of the drums, and there's a riser here, so this all just creates this sense of a huge build up. Rising. Just by adding that extra high layer of piano, it just creates so much impact, at least for me. So yeah, that's one of my favourite things about the track. The only other thing, so there's some guitars going on, which again, like I said, I can't show you, but when it gets to the bridge, it's just sort of, it sort of strips it back a bit to just that. The only different thing here is this bass synth. So all I did with that, it's the same synth, but somewhere I've got a little effect on it. It might be this. That's the one. So it starts off with a little effect, just making it sort of staccato. And then it goes back to the sort of warm sort of synth, yeah. So that's pretty much it. When you get to this bit here, the piano just comes back in. And at this bit, you've got this is like the big final instrumental bit. There's some guitars going in. There's a guitar quite quietly mixed, doing a sort of high solo, noodly type thing. That is more or less everything. There's some white noise going on with a sort of flangey effect on it. Just because I really wanted it to be noisy, without being overly loud and aggressive. I really wanted this bit to have like the almost the feel of like someone's just crashing cymbals, like, but without actually using cymbals, because it just wasn't going to work. So you've got everything that's sort of built up to this moment. You've got the rhythm, you've got the pianos, din 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 din, and I just added this bit of white noise. So obviously there's no guitars here, like I said, but without the white noise it sounds like this. With the white noise it sounds like this. So it's quite subtle, but for me it makes all the difference. And then, so this track ends with a sort of fade out, and then as it fades out, it fades into like a synth thing, which just sounds like this. So I just wanted to have the synthy outro for some reason. I like it a lot. So this all fades out like so. This fades out as the synth fades in. So it clashes a bit, which I really like. And the drums disappear. And that's the end of the song. So yeah, that's pretty much the production of it. In terms of influences, like I said, I really wanted to create a indie rock sort of anthemic orchestral. You've got all these live instruments like the piano. I mean, it's all MIDI, other than the guitars. But I just wanted it to feel like this sort of natural orchestral thing. But then you've got all the synths and the weird glitchiness as well. So I wanted to combine influences like like the National and Arcade Fire. Those sorts of indie rock orchestral bands that I really, really love. And then I wanted to combine it with some of the glitchier stuff. I guess there are elements of like Eden inspiration. But that's the difficult thing with my songs, is that when I'm creating them, they're definitely inspired by certain bands and maybe even certain songs. Like I said, the original hip hop sort of version came from that Kendrick Lamar song almost directly, ripped really. But then if you listen to this, it doesn't sound anything like that Kendrick Lamar song. So this is the difficult thing with my songs, like the songs that I've created. It's like after they're done and after I've made them, I sort of struggle to like pick out the influences in the sense of specific things, because then to me it's just a Y Isaac song, and it's like not in a pretentious way, but in the way of like it's just something I've created now, and I've just combined a million different influences into one and sort of made this final product. So yeah, in terms of lyrical content, I won't go into that too much in this video or in this series or whatever. But yeah, I suppose it's just about fear and growing up, maybe, and fear of the future. To talk about the lyrics in a vague sense. That's sort of what a lot of my songs are about, really. So yeah, that's Afterthought. Yeah. I didn't realize this video was going to be so long. I'll maybe try and cut it down a bit in post. But yeah, if you have watched this video, hopefully you found it interesting. Like I said, I watched Dayglow's videos breaking down his songs, and I found that really interesting. And I tend to find song breakdown videos really, really interesting, but maybe that's just because I'm a production nerd. So maybe you've enjoyed this. If you want to see more of this kind of thing, breaking down other songs, let me know, because this has been pretty fun having a look back at it. And obviously it's a shame that I don't have the vocals and guitar and stuff, but yeah, especially I can do this sort of thing with some of the new music that I'm working on. Once that's released, I could definitely break that down, because I'll have everything then, and it will all be fresh in my memory. So yeah, if you have watched this far, thank you very much for sticking around. I hope you've enjoyed this video. So yeah, let me know if you want to see more of this kind of thing or not. That's totally cool as well. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.